Hey there, this is Lady Jamers, and I am doing the fourth state that joined the U.S. Union and ratified the Constitution. Now, Georgia's nickname is the Peach State. The date that the colony was founded was February 12th, 1733. The date that it was ratified is January 2nd, 1788. The current state capital and been the state capital since 1868 is Atlanta. The state board is the Brown Thrusher. The state motto is wisdom, justice, and moderation. Now, here's an interesting thing about the state flower. Up until this year, 2026, the state flower was the Cherokee rose, and they voted to change it to the Sweet Bay magnolia. Now, personally, I think the magnolia fits a little bit better, but it also fits in another way of why they changed it. The Cherokee rose is not a native plant to the state. And why have your state flower not be a flower that grows in your state normally? The Sweet Bay magnolia is a native plant, and that's the main reason they changed it. Now, I picked three little stories to tell you about Georgia. And of course, the history is one of them. And then I have a little story about Savannah and a little story about one of the citizens of Atlanta, you could say. Now, Britain's King George II chartered the land of Georgia to General James Oglethorpe and a group of trustees. This charter established the colony as a philanthropic endeavor, you could say. Basically, it was a place for the poor and the persecuted to go. It was Oglethorpe's version of a utopia. It was also to be a military buffer between South Carolina and Spanish Florida. Georgia was named after King George II, and on February 12, 1733, James Oglethorpe led his first settlers to the city of Savannah. Now, Savannah is named after the Shawnee. The river that flows by the city of Savannah is named the Savannah River, hence why Oglethorpe named the city Savannah. It is the oldest city in the state, and it is the first state capital. Upon settling in Georgia, Oglethorpe became friendly with the local Indians. And as a result of this goodwill between the settlers and the Indians, the area thrived. Now, originally, Georgia was banned. Now, Georgia originally banned slavery as part of Oglethorpe's wishes. Now, when you think of slavery in the Old South, Georgia is part of it, right? So why did they ban it? Well, like I said, Oglethorpe wanted to have a utopia, and there's no slavery in a utopia. But as the colony, you know, improved its economic standing and thrived, there was pressure from the settlers to the trustees that they wanted to have slavery. And the ban against slavery was overturned effective January 1st, 1751. And then you basically had the Georgia that we have learned about in school with the plantations and everything. Georgia succeeded from the Union on January 19th, 1861 to join the Confederacy and fight against the Yankees, you could say, and the Union. After the Civil War, there was Reconstruction, and I could go all about the Civil War, but that's for another story. Now, with the Reconstruction, a new South began. The plantations changed from slavery to sharecropping, which were basically like tenants farming the land and all. And from that, they had more industry. There's textiles, the distillery, and a big economic shift to have Georgia what it is today in the 21st century. So, you're asking, if Atlanta became the capital in 1868 and Savannah was the first capital, was Savannah the capital and then Atlanta? Actually, no, there were 5 total state capitals in Georgia. But why was Atlanta chosen for the state capital, which is the state capital now? It was during the Reconstruction, the rail infrastructure and the rapidly rebuilding and reconstruction of the actual city made it so that it was a very good choice to use for the state capital, and is still the state capital, and it's a city that has changed throughout the years, and you will see that in one of the pictures that I have in my little collage thing. Now, the second story I want to tell you about is set in Savannah. Now, the t-shirt I'm wearing right now is my Tybee Island, and Tybee Island is a little, like, sea, like it's almost like Ocean City, but right off of, Georgia instead of New Jersey. And I went there to visit in 2018, and I also visited Savannah, which was like a half an hour across the Ray inland. And Savannah was the definition of the word Southern hospitality. Everybody was so welcoming and everything, and they were very proud of their city. As me and my friends went around on different tours that they had. Now, one of the tours that we didn't go on was to the Bonaventure Cemetery. Now, the Bonaventure Cemetery is actually a really cool place if you are into like ghost stories and history and even more. The cemetery was featured in the movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which is actually based on a true story, and it's a whole tale in its own right. The story I'm going to tell you is about the story of little Gracie Watson. Gracie Watson was born July 10th, 1883. Her parents moved to Savannah from New England and ran the Pulaski Hotel. Little Gracie was the unofficial greeter and would entertain guests by dancing and singing songs. When Gracie was but 6 years old, she developed pneumonia, and just 2 days shy of Easter in 1889, which was April 12th, if you're wondering, she passed away. Her parents and those that knew her deeply mourned her loss. They hired a sculptor to make a statue of her. He made a life-size statue from a picture that he was given. That became the tombstone. The grave site is rather popular to this day. It was so popular that they built a fence around it in attempts to protect it, and visitors often come by and sometimes leave flowers, toys, and other little items for Gracie. Local legend says that if you move one of the toys, that the statue would cry tears of blood. But as ghosts go, Gracie is a happy spirit. She has been said to run around the cemetery and is seen wearing a white dress. She is most active on moonlight nights when she is, laughing and playing and sometimes sitting next to guests on bench. The staff of the Pulaski Hotel used to hear her laugh and play too. But the grief of her loss was just too much for her parents, so her parents moved back to New England. So, what happened to the hotel? Are there still ghostly spirits at the hotel? The original building was demolished in 1957, and a new two-story building was built in its place. It is now a bank. There were no reports of Gracie haunting the bank. She keeps all her haunts to the cemetery, or so I'm told. If you want to visit her grave is located at Section E, Lot 98. My next bit is about Margaret Mitchell and Gone with the Wind. When I was a teenager, I watched the movie Gone with the Wind, and it totally hooked and fascinated me. I am still hooked and fascinated by it. I watched the movie, read the book, and actually read other books about the movie. And in fact, believe it or not, I'm going to show you what I have, and I have 3 more books behind me that I didn't get because they wouldn't come out of the bookshelf easily, and I thought I had enough to show you. I have this, which is the Gone with the Wind cookbook, Gone with the Wind companion, Gone with the Wind screenplay, which actually I really like this one. And this is the definitive history and everything. And this celebrates the 50th anniversary too. Not to mention the hardback copy of the book. And you can see that I've had it for a while. It's kind of worn. Yes, yeah, can you tell I'm a little bit hooked? So, Margaret Mitchell was born and raised in Atlanta. She grew up immersed with the Civil War history. Her mother died during the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, and she wrote this experience into her novel when Scarlett's mother died of typhoid fever. It took her 10 years to finish the novel Gone with the Wind, and wrote the bulk of her story while living in an apartment on Peachtree Street. She also put Peachtree Street in the actual novel itself. It is the Atlanta resident of Aunt Pittypat, and Aunt Pittypat is the aunt of Scarlett's first husband, Charles Hamilton. Just a month after Gone with the Wind was published, David O. Selznick purchased the film rights to the actual novel. Margaret Mitchell was thrilled. She got $50,000, which was one of the highest amounts to ever be paid to a debut artist at that time. However, when the film actually came out, because Margaret Mitchell had no say in the film, I guess she either didn't want to or they never asked. So basically, she was not impressed with the finished product, even though I was. One of the things she said was that it felt like there were strangers wearing her children's clothes. Margaret also felt the story a little bit flattened by making it into a romance. And I have to admit, she wasn't wrong there. When I read the actual novel after watching the movie, I was very surprised. Now, there's always things left out of books, because if you did that, you would have a 3-part Lord of the Rings, and I'm sure I didn't get through all 3 Lord of the Rings because I found them kind of boring, the book-wise. But the movie was great. Now, going back to Gone with the Wind, I noticed that some of the personalities even changed. In Scarlett's sisters, for instance, the sister Sue Ellen I thought she was a spoiled brat, because she's like moping this and moping that all through the movie. And in the book, she is actually very kind, very hardworking, and she is, in a sense, as much a backbone as anybody else in the story. Now, Margaret Mitchell spent most of her life in Atlanta, and it's kind of interesting how Peachtree Street is weaved in and out of her life. Not only did she live there while she was writing the book, and she put the street in the book, the premiere of the movie was done at the Lewis Theater on Peachtree Street, and unfortunately, she had a fatal accident on Peachtree Street. On August 11th, 1949, she was crossing the street when she was hit by an off-duty taxi driver. She died from her injuries 5 days later, and the driver was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Her legacy lives on in Gone with the Wind. Coming up is not only about Margaret Mitchell, the history of Georgia, and Gracie Watson, but also the celebrities and the sports teams and a little bit more in the little collage coming up. Next month is the 5th state of Connecticut. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and will stay tuned for Connecticut and all the other videos that come up on Lady Jamer's channel. Don't forget to hit those like, subscribe, and make sure those notification buttons are hit for each and every video. Until next time, have a great day and see you later. Bye-bye.